Greetings, and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast that said they'd stop taking so many damn review games, and yet, here we are. I'm your host, the man who still makes and breaks New Year's resolutions each year, David Lloyd, and I'm here with a gentleman that is no stranger to the self-inflicted pain of meeting too many deadlines, Jordan Rudick.
I feel like I've reviewed 4 games in the last 2 weeks or something like that. That might actually be true. I might have at least published 4 reviews in the last 2 weeks. I was gonna say to you, I was listening to last week's episode with Paige, the direct reactions that you guys had, and I'm like, oh, an hour and a half. Like, this is a really long episode just for you two to talk. And I'm like, and then I realized why it was so long. You mentioned Pixel Remaster like 5 times in the first 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay, there. That justifies the over 90-minute recording length there.
Well, I was doing a lot of moonwalking after that direct was over because I'm so excited that there's no way that Pixel Remaster's coming in the first half of the year. So, things are looking up and up for that 6-pack of beer.
They're just building up your confidence so that the fall from grace is even further. So that's fine with me. They were not going to put that Pixel Remaster announcement in with a direct loaded with RPGs.
Yeah,
I don't think we've ever seen a direct with that many RPG announcements. Like that was just nuts.
And so many of them old Square games like Live Alive and what was it? The Front Mission, I think, is a
Front
Square
Mission 1 and 2, Chrono Cross. Triangle Strategy obviously showed that off again.
Yeah,
like it was crazy. Like Square Enix,
Kingdom
going
Hearts,
really, they're going really hard for Switch. Yeah, no shortage of games to play. But if you're an RPG fan, you're eating real good right now. I think so.
Yeah. Well, I think even the last couple of years, there's always we always think about doing a direct episode, and then we look at like the source material that's in there. Like, all right, there's like 3 games out of the 20 or 30 or whatever it is that are RPGs. So I guess this is kind of redundant. But then, we watch the direct, and then I'm like, holy moly!
Yeah, almost. It felt like almost half of the announcements were RPGs or RPG adjacent. Like Fire Emblem Warriors or something too.
Well, and then I don't even feel like we gave Xenoblade 3 much. By the time we got to the end of the episode, we were so exhausted. It was like, yeah, Xenoblade 3 is out. All right, wrap her up.
And that was, I thought that was the most hype announcement. Like I was, It looks awesome. Like I can't believe how good that looks, and it obviously seems to be building off of the first 2 games. I love that art style for the characters. September. I can't believe that September too. Like
that's quick.
What that makes me think is that it's possible, rather than doing December, like make it a holiday. Just after the holiday game, kind of slotting in that holiday window. Nintendo's got to have something big for November, you'd think, like whether that's Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey 2 or something like that. There's going to be some heavy hitters coming after Xenoblade, because normally Xenoblade kind of concludes the year. It's like the last big game, but for there to be stuff after that too, it's going to be a good year for everybody.
It'd be interesting if it was a new Mario, because I think didn't Xenoblade come? Wasn't like Mario in October and then Xenoblade was December or something like that?
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you had a couple months after.
So around this time or something.
You could very easily see November being like the big Black Friday game being a Mario game. Like it's a no brainer if it's finished and ready to go. Sure, and then the Mario game, you probably don't do Mario and Zelda. You do one, and then it makes the wait for the next one a little bit easier. So I think you'd even maybe start with Mario, push Zelda to March next year, and people will be playing Mario until then. You're good, right? So
yeah, makes sense. I guess as long as they're on schedule, then I'm sure that would work.
Yeah,
it was funny watching that Xenoblade though. When it first came out, like when they're showing it, the character design kind of looked more like the first game. Like it almost looked like they're going back to the first game. So I'm like, okay, so Saito obviously is one and done. There's no way this is him. There's not enough skin being shown. And then to see the announcement from Takahashi afterwards, and they're like, and he's back. And I'm like, really? I guess somebody asked him to take it from a 10 down to a 4, I guess.
Yeah, he's got someone watching him at all times now, and he's got to make sure everyone's properly clothed. But we don't want to speak too soon, because that might just be what they show in a direct. But when you actually get into the game, where there's individual trailers about some more of the characters, there could very well be who knows.
Well,
I don't want to speculate too much yet, but
you could see. I bet we might end up seeing blades from the second game show up in the third game, or Yeah, could be anything. It was funny though, because when I took a deeper look at the designs, like there's that one that's a couple of them are kind of popular. The female looking characters, like they're the cat ears
Yeah, she
girl, I
looks
think has
great.
been. Yeah, but it's funny because I was looking at like the design of her dress and stuff, and it's very very close to Mithra, like
Right. Yeah, sure.
like the way it has kind of like the sequenced pant with like little dots and like it looked clearly like covering more
Yeah,
compared
yeah,
to Mithra,
definitely.
but it's very much looks like they're like the same fabric or something. So it's interesting to
Hmm.
see like little things like that, and then the pointing out of like the Mechonis and the Uriah in the background and stuff. Like, oh man, it's
And I really like the idea that, it's kind of, it reminds me a little bit of the first game, in just in terms of the story that we've got so far. These two kind of warring factions that hate each other very much. Mechonis versus Bionis kind of thing. I believe you see a character who could be Melia, maybe even was confirmed to be Melia, where she's wearing like a mask, but like a dark kind of steel or iron mask or something like that. But her dress looks like
yes,
Melia. So
yeah,
you see that character flash for a second, but maybe she's, I don't know, gone to the other side, or she's a darker character this go around. I don't know. I still haven't played Future Connected, which was that kind of epilogue that came with the remaster or the re-release of the first game that came to Switch. So
yeah.
I wonder if there's something in there that could signal or point to something for the third game. So I need to finish that at some point before September, definitely. If
I
if
should
this
probably
deluge of games just can hold on
yeah,
for
that's right.
one week or two.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking even myself, like I probably should play Torna sometime between now and
Yes,
September if
yes,
I
for
can.
sure, for
But
sure. Yeah.
clearly, I'll be having to purchase a digital copy of it because it's like Nintendo ran out of physical copies of Xenoblade
Hmm.
2 and Torna because trying to
Yeah.
find them is next to impossible. So
I think Torna was a limited release too, just because it is kind of DLC-ish too, right? It's long.
yeah,
You can definitely play it standalone. And I actually do have a physical copy of that game, but I think they probably didn't publish that many. So yeah, if you've got a physical copy of that game, hang on to it for sure. It's probably
is
going to be get more rare, but
gonna say you could probably sell that physical copy on eBay right now and trade it in for a Series X because I think the
that's
valuation
right.
must be pretty close.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely a time where if you've got rare games, you're looking to unload. There
Yeah.
are a lot of panic buyers out there right now. So
Yep.
yeah, but we'll see if we get to that discussion by the end of today. We've got some other things to talk about too.
Yeah, we got some great. We were talking about review games, and so we've got a lineup of different games that we reviewed, all RPGs, obviously, and they kind of range from a couple of indie games that were really fun, and we're gonna finish up with a game that just came out recently from
Hmm.
Square, which was a shock, a surprise. So,
For sure, yeah.
yeah, I guess we'll start maybe with the first one that both you and I actually reviewed. You
Hmm.
reviewed for NWR, I reviewed for Thirsty Mage, and it's
Yep.
called A Rise of the Third Power. So you, Jordan, actually pointed this one out to me. I probably wouldn't have even known it existed if you hadn't suggested I pick this up for review. And
It's the same for the next game we're going to talk
yeah,
about
that's
too.
right.
Both of
Yeah.
these are Jordan suggestion specials.
Yep. And I think most people probably don't know that Rise of the Third Power released because it released on the same day as the direct.
Yeah.
So those poor devs probably lost any kind of marketing buzz or anything like that. So hopefully, if anyone hears what us talk about it, it's going to be obviously spoiler free. But yeah, we're gonna wax poetic about it, and if you want to pick it up, that it is out. So
Yeah.
yeah, so this is a game from small dev team, and this is actually it's actually made in RPG Maker. It's a mix of RPG Maker and Unity. I did
Hmm.
a little research on it because a lot of the times I know people can kind of get their nose up about RPG Maker, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm not one of them. You kind of have to. give me a reason to play those ones, just because there's so many out there. So it's kind of diamond in the rough, finding some good games on there. But yeah, this one looked pretty neat. It obviously had the retro look, the SNES kind of era look to it, that you and I both enjoy. So that was obviously what kind of gets your attention at first. But then what happens is when you kind of get into the game, you see the combat system, and it's got this terrific. It's both complex in the way that it plays. It's a unique way that they have it set up, because it's not kind of like your traditional, use magic until it wears out and then use a potion or something like that. Like, they have a pretty neat system where you can recharge on the fly, which we'll kind of get into in the moment. And it looks beautiful in the turn-based combat mode, because there's all these special effects that happen when you're doing the moves, and they really rely on kind of mixing and matching with different characters, like their move sets, so that you can kind of build on top of different moves. And one character hits one way, and then another character can kind of chain onto that in a certain kind of way. But yeah, it's pretty neat. And they do like those combination moves that are kind of, I guess, kind of Chrono Trigger-ish. You can't do a trifecta move, but you can do like the two particular characters have special moves that they can do together. So it's pretty fun. And the thing that surprised me, I think, most about the game is how I ended up kind of getting into the story. Like, it's kind of a bit of a cliche story, in the sense of, like, it's based on, so it's in this kind of world. It's not Earth, but it's kind of medieval-ish Earth sort of thing, like medieval time-ish. Yet at the same time, the kind of political intrigue of the time is very similar to Europe in, like, pre-World War II, post-World War I, where there was this great war that happened in the world, and there was like two factions that ended up defeating the third faction. And from like the third faction that got defeated, who ended up surrendering, a new leader kind of emerged from that country and ended up is kind of gearing things back up for war. So clearly the leader in this country is Hitler. Like, there's no getting around it. There's a whole bunch of story beats that kind of alludes to the fact that, like, that's kind of where the inspiration for this person is, with a Russian name. It's been a few weeks since we played it. Now I'm blanking on the name, like Narikov or something like that.
Yeah. I've been blanking on a lot of these names, and
yes,
I think the only ones I really remember are the main characters. Some of the, like, the villains, some of the side characters, I just don't quite remember. But this is a symptom of us playing too many games,
yeah,
and
too many games.
too many RPGs, because they all have characters. You're supposed to get to know them all and remember them all, and rise up their powers. Unfortunately, I guess a casualty of this, that even when I was writing my review, I had to go back and, like, check some names, make sure I'm spelling them right and all that stuff, just because I just couldn't keep everything straight.
Yep. And so I guess basically the way that the story works out is, it's kind of this post-war but pre-war, and there's of the three countries, the one that was defeated with the Hitler type is an empire. The main kind of the one where most of the story focused on is a monarchy, and then there's a third country that's kind of the initially was an ally of the monarchy, and they're a democracy. And it's kind of funny to see the governments at work throughout the story, because they're all pretty dysfunctional for different reasons. So it's pretty funny to see that. But the story basically begins with the monarchy is, so you have this war and they defeated this country, but there's still this, like, one city that's kind of an independent city that the monarchy thinks really belongs within their I don't know, I guess not empire, but commonwealth, I guess, is the way to say it. So they kind of want this in there, but the democracy it doesn't really support this city being annexed. And so then the Hitler type leader from the empire is now supporting the monarchy in their bid to take kind of envelop this city state. So what's happening at the time when the game first starts is that the princess of this monarchy is being wedded to the son of the Hitler type in the country that was defeated, and the whole point of it is that they're supposed to kind of being solidifying this new partnership in this kind of new era of time or whatever. So the king of this monarchy is kind of made a side deal with this defeated nation that, I'll marry my daughter to your prince, quote unquote, and we'll form this partnership and we'll take over this other city, and kind of nuts to the democracy. And so then we're introduced to the kind of the first two heroes, which is Rowan, who is a pirate or an ex-pirate, I guess. And oh man, I'm blanking on the name of the girl that's with him.
Karina.
Karina, right?
Karina, yeah.
So Rowan and Karina are like the first people that we meet, and they're infiltrating the the castle of the monarchy to kidnap the princess before her wedding, so that they can explain to the princess what's going on with the plot, like what the empire is really up to, why this guy is letting his son marry the monarchy, that it's all kind of a sham, so that the empire can resume trying to take over the world, like in the previous World War.
Yep.
And so they're successful in capturing her, and they kind of go on this adventure out of the castle, and the princess kind of warms up to she's obviously initially mad that she's being kidnapped by these kind of bandits, I guess, but she rarely left the castle, so she doesn't necessarily mind the being outside the castle and learning about the world. And then they meet people along the way, like they meet the leader of a resistance, and they meet up with this priestess who joins up, and then there's there's a representative from the democracy
with the blue hair.
Oh yeah, the dark mage is hilarious.
Aiden, I think his name is.
Yeah, Aiden, and so he's from the Empire, like the evil Empire, but he's actually trying to kill his sister, who is kind of a higher up in the Empire.
Yeah, actually, like a general for them.
Yeah, there's so many intricacies with the story, and you really do get to know all of the different party members. They all get their time in the sun, sort of. I would say, they're always introduced at a nice pace, just long enough to kind of get to know the details of someone, and then they add someone, and then you get to see them interact. And I think you and I had talked about I kind of felt that the conversations seemed a little bit too modern conversational. There's like a lot of slang that's used, and it's just kind of a very informal talk, and so that kind of turned me off a little bit. But the thing that I feel that the writing team did really well in this game is that you really come to know the characters and become invested in their outcome, and you're always wondering what's happening next.
I think it's one of the funny things about the game is that the dialogue definitely is the focus, and the game is very quick to kind of move past narrative events and just get back to the characters interacting with each other. I think they know that that's a strength of the game, is that the dialogue and the humor and the writing are things that people are going to latch onto, and I know you and I both did in playing this game. And it's just a funny thing that the big events in the story I think they lose a little bit of their impact because the game won't fixate on them very long, or won't stay with them very long. It'll quickly go back to, okay, let's get the characters talking again, or let's get back into the character relationships. And it's funny, I guess it's a kind of a double-edged sword, that you don't get the maybe full narrative impact that you would want, but you do get fun, engaging character conversations. So if you prefer that, you're going to get into this game, because there's a lot of funny, witty meetings between the characters and interactions, and they're making fun of each other. They're reminiscing about things. They're often making fun of Rowan and his drinking problem, and that comes up pretty often. But you do see them grow, especially the princess Ariel, like her journey around the world to get a wider perspective of the conflict and about what's been happening in this world, and how things have changed after the war. I think it is a kind of nice transformation that she undergoes, and I think she's probably one of the better characters. She does get a lot of the screen time. A lot of what's happening is in service of her characterization, her development. But I ended up liking her a lot. I think
Mm-hmm.
that she is she is at the center of the stage, and she is kind of, you are drawn to her. You're drawn to her dialogue and what's happening to her kind of story. And she just becomes really kind of powerful and independent by the end, rather than kind of helpless and dependent on her the royalty or royal family and stuff like that. So yeah, I liked her a lot. But I think all the characters, yeah, like you said, they do get their time in the sun. Um, it is hard to, just because of the way the progression system works, it is hard to. I should clarify. Everyone shares. You kind of share experience points. So after a battle, a single meter will fill up, and if you level up, you get some skill points, and then you can use the skill points on individual characters' skill trees or skill charts. So because of that, if you spend if you spend all your skill points on 2 or 3 characters, they're going to be a lot stronger, and then when you get a new character and you don't have any skill points to put into their tree, they fall behind, so you're not as incentivized to use the new characters, I feel like, or it's trickier
Yeah.
to use them. I wish that you were awarded extra skill points when you got a new character in your party, so that you could boost them up to the same level as your other party members. Or maybe the implications that you're supposed to hang on to some skill points. I don't know. That might be a little counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they didn't make that very clear. And the other thing too is with some of the characters, depending on how you're like the early characters are more focused on kind of like single attack, like big single attacks, like
yeah,
taking a
yeah.
big chunk out of one character. And then later on you start to get more characters that are more geared towards like attacking groups and that sort of thing. Like there's
Hmm.
and it all kind of comes to a head for me in when the gentleman from the democracy, he's like an old soldier, and he gets he joins the party, and he's very focused on like all of his attacks. I don't know if he even can attack someone individually. I think
Yeah.
all of his attacks are party based, and like you said, when by the time I think he was about the fifth or sixth person that joined, so I had spent all my points by
Exactly.
then,
Yeah.
so everyone was already like a mile ahead of him. And then I added him in the party because I'm like, okay, I wanted to try it out, and it was so weak that I was like, forget it. Like,
Yeah.
because the attacks are already weaker because they're attacking more, and then it just was counterintuitive to the way, because I was kind of employing a strategy where it's like, okay, I'm going to try to take out the most powerful enemy first, or or maybe try to take out like a bunch of weak enemies quickly. Like it was basically my strategy for most of the game was like eliminate characters as quick as possible, whether they're the strongest or the weakest, so that when the wave, the round comes and they start taking their turns, that they have less turns to hit me or whatever. So to have this guy come in and just kind of like, only hitting for small amounts, but doing it to the entire party, it just wasn't helping my cause at all. So I rarely used him, and I think I might have used him a handful of times the entire game.
I mean, and you might not even have the crafting materials at the time when they join to improve their equipment, right? Like you might have
Yeah.
spent all your crafting materials boosting the the weapons of the characters you do like to use. So that's another thing, that like you can't just necessarily go into a shop. Maybe you can, but if you get a new party member and you forget to equip them properly, or level craft better weapons for them, and then you go into a dungeon, you don't have the materials, you're kind of stuck. Maybe it's harder to use them. So yeah, I guess I just wish they're, because of the emphasis on switching characters during battle or starting battles, and you get a choice, you get an option at the beginning of every battle to swap the current party. Like, and I know when the game first started, you were a little annoyed by that. Like, oh, just let me go in with the party members that I have, in like a traditional RPG style. But I think later in the game, like there are maybe certain battles where you want someone who can inflict a particular status effect, or Aiden the dark mage can summon like a demon to fight for your team. It's nice to have that extra member of your party to do damage. The
Yeah.
demon actually has an ability to destroy non-boss characters in a single hit,
Yeah.
which can be good if you're fighting a boss that has a lot of minions with them. So you've got that, you can use the demon to take out those minions pretty easily. But yeah, yeah, I guess I just wish the incentives, or wish the game made it easier or more palatable to do the character swapping, because I think it is an interesting mechanic.
Yeah, for sure. And then, well, and with one of the characters, I guess, with the priestess, it's I think you get her like the fourth. I guess she's probably
Yeah, I think
I think she's the
fourth
fourth
character.
member,
Yeah,
and when she first gets in, I didn't really use her because I just found like the party I had. So you can only ever use three people at a time. Though when you're in battle, you can actually swap people out, which was
yeah.
a pretty neat mechanic. Though I really did forget that that existed for the longest time, so I didn't use the swap all that often. But um, the priestess ended up, like, certain characters ended up becoming more useful later, because like the priestess, the enemies, they were pretty easy early on for the first little bit, and then as they started to hit me harder, the priestess is like the healer of the party. So all
Hmm.
of a sudden it's like, okay, like this is great. Now I've got someone that can keep us alive or revive if need be. And then the priestess even had a shield too, which would protect you from like one or two rounds of hits.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where the priestess went from like, um, the weakest to like overpowered, I to a certain degree. Like,
Hmm.
I don't there was rarely a time where I wasn't using the priestess. Um, and then yeah, Ariel's had was a pretty strong in her attacking too. Like she
Yeah, I
could do
used to. I
both
used her a lot.
party hits, like full party hits, but then also had a very strong like single focused attack. Um, so
She had an ability to buff her next attack. Like you could increase
yes,
your damage substantially on your next attack. So you kind of charge her on one attack, and then use maybe her ranged attack that hits everybody on the second attack. You do a lot of damage. You can take out a lot of small minions that way. So yeah, I kept her around for a long time.
now the one thing they do to try to force you to use other characters is there is a fatigue meter that builds
Yes.
up. So if you are using the same party all the time, like after a battle, their meter will go up, and then they become weaker as the meter goes up higher. Uh, I mean, in theory, that's how it's supposed to work, but I didn't really find that I was ever all that close. Like there's an item that you find throughout the game called Second Wind, and you can purchase it in stores, and or you can even find it in chests and stuff. And I always felt like I had enough Second Winds that if I ever got to the point where it's like, okay, I've used the priestess for like every battle for the last 2 hours, so I better use a second wind. So it was I never felt like I was ever feeling the effects of overuse. So I don't know if how useful that mechanic was, but
Yeah, it just
um,
seems like just something extra that didn't really add anything meaningful. I
yeah,
don't think. And I think this is one of the things that can happen with smaller teams that make RPGs. They maybe try to add things just to be different, or just to add a new wrinkle that people haven't seen
yeah,
before necessarily. But I that's not how to make that's not how to make a game like this interesting. I
no,
don't think like that's just something that it's if it could be annoying, but it's never interesting.
yeah. Well, and
I,
it's
yeah.
like at the end, if you go, usually in RPGs, you go to the end, you get your all your health back and stats back or whatever like that. But the one wrinkle that they add in this game is that the enemies respawn if you go to the end.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that's I don't know. Like I said again, I what I ended up normally doing was just avoiding the end unless I wanted the enemies to
Hmm.
respawn,
Hmm.
and so I would just basically use the priestess's heal effect, and then just abuse second wins.
The nice thing about the ends is you could get a temporary buff. I'm not sure how temporary it was. I don't remember how long it lasted, but
It's
if
usually
you
like
ate
5 to 10 battles or something, I
right,
noticed.
okay, yeah. So if you did that, if you knew a boss fight was coming, or if you left an area, you wouldn't want to leave an area necessarily, because then all the enemies would respawn. But it's pretty easy to run around from the enemies. Like
Yeah,
you don't if you don't want to get into
no
fights,
random
you can
encounters.
avoid them.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's no random encounters. All the enemies you can see in the overworld.
yeah,
If you engage them from behind, you get like a bonus. But yeah, you can get a buff from eating a particular meal at the inn. So in addition to sleeping and restoring your stats, curing fatigue and things, you can also gain like extra attack or extra defense or whatever, depending on the meal you choose. So I like things like that. I think that's a nice incentive to kind of balance out the fact that the enemies respawn. Of course, enemies respawning at the end, that's reminiscent of something like Dark Souls, where you go to the bonfire and you have to make that choice. Is it worth healing and refilling your Estus flasks at the bonfire, knowing that all the enemies in the world are going to respawn?
Yeah, I'm sure that's where that inspiration came from. I'm sure. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I guess we got a couple more games coming up, so maybe we'll kind of just wrap up our talk on Rise. Like I said, we both have reviews on sites if you want to get more detail. But I mean, at the end of the day, I enjoyed the game. I thought it was a pretty fun. I think it took me about, I want to say 16 hours, something like that, around there. It was fun. I'm not going to spoil it, but I was slightly disappointed at the ending. I felt like maybe my expectations of it were higher than, a little too high or something. I was kind of expecting kind of a, grand finale, and it was kind of a bit of a whimper for me, but it didn't really sour the experience at all. It was still a great RPG. I think it's something that turn-based fans will really enjoy, and especially if you're nostalgic or just enjoy the pixel graphics of the SNES era.
Yeah, if you're into retro kind of RPGs, throwbacks, like SNES, GBA kind of style look to them, but some nice flourishes during battle, some interesting, some funny character dialogue as well. I think you'll get into it. I think the game, it doesn't overstay its welcome. I think that it is fairly well paced, but some of the dungeons are repetitive, and the idea of having to like always collect like a bronze, a silver, and a gold key, I think is overplayed. I would like to see a little bit more variety in terms of just navigating the world. But yeah, it's pretty good, and I think it's worth checking out. The team that made it, Stegosoft Games, they made an earlier game called Arafel, and it's on Switch, Arafel Enhanced Edition. I actually reviewed that too. This game is better than that. So if you played Arafel and liked it, you'll probably like this even more. I think it's just a better game overall. More interesting characters. The battle system is changed up a little bit. More, like I said, more splendor, more just more sea going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would recommend this game. Not not a full recommendation to everybody, but yeah, RPG 2D RPG fans should get one.
So this was a game I was looking for after we played Symphony Night last year, because time is all crumpled into one big blob. I can't remember at all when we actually played it. Might have been mid. Trying to say I want to say it was in the summertime or maybe the fall or something. I don't know. But
I was
anyway,
gonna say November. I was gonna say after Halloween.
It was like the Halloween special or something.
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah,
it was
exactly. Because I asked about the Halloween candy. Remember that? That's right. How I remember that. Yeah,
that's right.
So I think it was like literally a week after Halloween, or maybe it was that week. Yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as we were done Sympathy Night, I was not ready to give up on that game, but we had already played through it, and I had already explored I unlocked the entire map, so I had nothing left to do in Symphony Night. Still wanted to play, so I was looking for. I thought like there has to be indie games that are inspired by Symphony Night. It's such an iconic game. Somebody must be doing it, and I had a lot of great recommendations from people that were close. Like I watched trailers, I looked at reviews and stuff, and I could see that a lot of them were maybe like 80% or 75% of what I was looking for. And as things go, games just piled and piled and piled, so I just ended up forgetting what I was moved on to the next batch of games. And then and then again, like you said, you as we were playing Rise of the Power, Rise of the Third Power, I think you said you should pick up this other game when you're done. And this was a game that you reviewed for Nintendo World Report, and I actually picked it up on I think it had just released on Game Pass when you had recommended it, so I didn't even have to pay anything for it, which is the best kind of game. And so I downloaded it, and it's a short game. It's 4 to 5 hours. But this scratched every itch that I had for missing Symphony of the Night.
I don't even think we've said the name yet. It's so
Nope.
it's a long
No,
one.
I
It's
was leaving it
record.
to you because
Oh,
it's way too
okay.
long and
I
it's
thought that. I
ridiculous.
thought that. Yeah. So this is Record of Lodos War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth. The actual title has some like funny dashes to it as well, but
Yeah.
we won't worry about that. So Record of Lodos War is a fantasy novel series from a Japanese author. I don't know if they've been translated or not, or if it's turned into an anime or any other
There is an
properties.
anime.
There
I
is,
feel
okay.
bad because one of our patrons asked about the anime connected to the game, and
Yeah.
and it's funny because I had no idea. I have no clue of any of this story stuff. Like, I went in completely blind, have no clue about any of it. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I can't say if fans of the anime or books are going to enjoy the story that they present here. All I can say is I didn't need to know anything.
Yeah,
It
no,
was fine.
exactly. I mean, I think that's the thing is that anyone can play this game, anyone can pick it up. The fact that it's on multiple platforms and it's just super accessible gameplay. If you've played any of the, Igavania, Castlevania type games, you'll easily be able to get into it. It is so feels so inspired by Symphony of the Night, but it's also it's a simplified version of that game, right? It's not so complicated. Backtracking really isn't required here. It's actually stage or level based, even though you can go back to earlier parts of the map. There's teleporters all over the place. I played the game mostly without teleporting back much at all. Like, you can go back and get different weapons or extra health or magic pickups to raise your maximum levels there, but I don't think you really need to. I think
No.
the game only gets majorly difficult at the end. But if you buy enough health potions, you'll probably be able to make your way through anyway. If you've been
Brute
somewhat
force your way
thorough,
in.
and if you buy enough health potions, you'll be able to finish it off. But yeah, the game, it looks so good. Like, it really does look so much like Symphony of the Night, and you have like a dashing move just like Alucard does in that game.
Yep.
But Deedlit's the main character. She's kind of like a high elf type character. She's got magical abilities. She's got a bow. There's all different types of weapons you can use, from swords and lances to, I guess, like size, like short kind of daggers. I think there might be an axe weapon. There's all different kinds of stuff you find. I
Lances, like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, longer spears, short swords,
Yep.
longer swords, whatever. They all have different, attack stats, or how fast they actually
Speed.
swing.
Yep.
So you can kind of figure out what weapons works best for you, weapon style. But I found myself constantly switching it out because you find better weapons all the time. You can buy a ton of different weapons from the shops as well. That there's this one character who ends up being like a shopkeeper, and you find him all over the place.
Mhm.
There's actually like there's a gambling game you can play. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. I think it's basically just roulette, pretty much, but or
Yep.
craps kind of. But you could play that game too. But yeah, the boss fights are fun. It's got this interesting mechanic where you've got these two elements, wind and fire, that you constantly have one of them activated at all times. Um, and if the wind is activated, you can walk through barriers that are blue colored, and they won't hurt you. They'll actually refill your magic meter. If you find a fire or red barrier, or an enemy shoots you with a red, like, kind of flaming attack, you switch to the fire element, and then that attack won't hurt you. It'll refill your magic meter. So a lot of the environmental hazards that you're negotiating, even like lava, if you switch to the fire element, you can walk through the lava, no problem. Boss fights often involve you switching between the two elements, frequently or quickly, to
Mhm.
avoid taking damage, right? There's this one boss fight where it's kind of two like Ifrit genie type spirits that are
Yeah.
floating around, and one's blue and one's red. And so they're attacking with their different beams, and whatever one's going to hit you, you need to quickly switch to that element to avoid taking damage. Um, it also follows that if you have the fire one equipped, you can use that against the blue enemy, and vice versa. And that goes for whether you're shooting arrows or using your sword or whatever. Um, yeah, I love this game. David, was you were absolutely
Yeah.
fixated with it when I first
Oh,
introduced
man.
it to you.
Oh, yeah. I went nuts. Like, I'm almost it's we ended up, I think it's about a 4 to 5 hour game,
Yeah,
and it's one of those things where I was like, at the end, I don't know if I was quite ready to go, but then I also felt like it was like the perfect ending. And that mechanic that you talk about too is so it was so strange when you first use it, because it wasn't immediately intuitive to me on how it actually worked, because on top of the way that you described it with like the fire and wind and
Yeah.
avoiding enemies or certain attacks and stuff, it also heals you. So when you attack,
Yes, that's right.
so when you're blue, like when you're glowing blue, when you attack and defeat enemies, the red meter fills up, and there's three levels. So you'll see the numbers at the top. Like you'll start off obviously at 1, and as you attack, it'll go to 2, and then it'll go to 3. And then what happens is that when one of them is at 3, you will automatically begin to heal. So it doesn't matter
Yeah.
like if you're almost dead or whatever, it'll just start healing. So if you're ever in a situation where you're almost dead, you can switch to the element that's at the third phase, and then just sit back and get full power. It doesn't do anything to your magic or anything. It just heals you up.
And the
But what
trade-off is
happens
that
is,
it also does more damage, right? Like
yeah,
you can inflict more damage with your level 3 fire spirit equipped, so you can heal and do more damage, but as soon as you take a hit, you lose a level. So
yeah.
that's the trade-off, right? And oh, what a great
So you,
mechanic.
I know, and you're constantly switching back and forth, because
Yes, all the time.
if you have, so usually what happens is you go into a boss, and there's actually like this meat that's hanging from a hook always in front of the boss, so that you can fill both up to 3. So you walk into the boss fight and you have 3, and then if you get hit, what you'll usually want to do is switch to the other element to heal, while at the same time building it back up to 3, so that you always have like a healing mechanic while you're fighting the boss. So you're always kind of flipping back and forth. And it's such a unique mechanic, because I can't think of another game that uses something like that, and especially at the speed that you have to do it at too.
Mhm.
There's a few bosses that they're like you had mentioned, kind of the Ifrit genie style, where one is one and one is the other. But a lot of the bosses, especially near the end, actually have like dual, where they'll use either fire or wind. So you'll be fighting one enemy, and all of a sudden they'll be switching from like one attack to the other. And the boss fights are kind of like obviously like Symphony Night, but it's kind of that kind of Mega Man style of, they have a very set pattern of, they do this, then this, then this, then this.
Yep.
And so I really enjoyed that, because I usually go in and get thumped, and then okay, I recognize like these things. So and then you just respawn right outside the right beside it, like
Yeah.
the boss area. So then you go back in, and you get a little further, and then you die, and then you get a little further, and there's really no penalties to dying. You just keep on going until you finally get it. And the final, there's like this boss rush at the end, where it's just absolutely anarchy, because it's just you're
Yeah.
just holding on
It's
for dear life. And I tell you, the euphoria from that final slash of the sword to finish that game, I was like, it was like 1 a.m. I was like sweating. I was like, no, I'm not going to bed till this is finished. This is BS. I'm gonna get this done. It was so fun getting through those bosses.
Yeah, I know, I was the same. I was sweating, my fingers were, like, starting to hurt and, like, tense
Yeah,
up, like, I had to take a break, I think, I probably would have been better off playing that if I still had my Switch Lite, or if I may have borrowed my wife's Switch Lite or something, but playing on the OLED's a little bit heavier, and I keep jamming the buttons, like, swinging the sword, right, swiping
yeah,
constantly. I think I was using a lot of weapons that were quick, but didn't do a ton of damage, so you could do a lot of
same. Yeah,
slashes, but
I
you have
did the
to
same.
jam the button to do all your attacks, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that took a lot out of me. But it's just
Well,
such a
yeah.
fantastic game, and I feel like
Yeah.
it very easy because of the funny name, very easy to slide under the radar of people.
Yes.
Like there's no real telling looking at that name that, oh, hey, this is like Symphony of the Night Light. Like if you like
Yes.
that game, you're probably gonna like this one. But there's no
Yeah.
real way to know that, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too. So you played it on Switch. I played
Yeah,
it on Game Pass. But with the way that the game played, like you said, because I also used like the small, quick attacks,
yeah,
so I was like jamming the buttons too. And I don't. find the Xbox controller is terrific at that. Like the buttons are a little too clicky, so what I ended up doing was I have an iPad Pro, so I just ran there's an Xbox app that you can run. So I had my what I don't know, it's like a 12-inch iPad or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I had a PS4 controller because I just find that that's the kind of the best setup for if you're like jamming the buttons really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up playing a lot of the game through on my iPad with the PlayStation controller. But yeah, like there's like you said, the title doesn't really tell you much. And then even when I went into Game Pass, it was hard to find the game, even when you told me what it was. And then even the artwork didn't. I don't know. It just didn't, because they're talking about the books it's based on and stuff. So
Yeah.
you could easily be like, well, I've never read them, so maybe I'm not gonna pick up. I'm not gonna be able to get into it because I'm not gonna know what's happening. And I definitely did not know what's happening. Like there's clearly things going on in the story where it's like they assume that certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but the story is so completely secondary that it's like it's completely and utterly non-needed. Like you just play it, enjoy it, don't worry about it. If you do know what's happening, I'm sure there's like that added benefit of like that added enjoyment, but it certainly does not take away from it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like the gameplay is so refined, feels so good. That mechanic, the switching between the element mechanic is so kind of novel. And it is implemented in the game so well. Like you are, it's not just like one of those optional things. Like, yeah, this is an ability, you can take it or leave it. No, like you have to use that, and you use it in smart ways that just feel fun. All the boss fights implemented in some way. Even just even the bow and arrow puzzles are fun. Like you have to take out your bow and arrow sometimes and shoot arrows through like tight corridors
Yeah.
to cut a
Ricochet.
rope open, to ricochet and
Yeah.
open up a door. Like it's a little silly, but it's fun. Like it's just a nice little break from the action.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different enemies. You can replay the game and maybe try to get some new weapons or complete the bestiary or whatever. Gosh, this is one of those games where if they announced like DLC for it, I'd buy it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Or if they announce like you
Or
can play the game
or
as a new
something.
character or a
Yeah.
sequel, I'd be all over that. And it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, this is a game that more people need to play. Absolutely, we need more of these. It's just funny that there's this whole backstory to the game that just doesn't matter. That's how good. That's how fun. That's how good the gameplay is. That the backstory, the world that this game is based on, this whole fantasy novel series does not matter. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of funny. So
The game is good enough that I might actually check out the anime.
I like that. Well, if you do, let me know because I'm curious about it, and I the game is so good that I almost want to see what all the fuss is about with the storyline and the world itself. So yeah.
Well, the final one. This is the one that came out of nowhere, and still shocked to believe that it just came out. And
I
yeah,
literally
you reviewed
just
it.
I
You
just
take it
published
away.
my review this morning. Like we're recording on a Wednesday, and the review embargo came up this morning. The same, basically the same time as as Monarch, the
Monarch.
Monarch
Yep.
embargo, which is a game you reviewed. Yeah, and this is the voice of the second entry in the Voice of Cards series, which I guess we can call a series now. I wasn't super surprised that a second game was coming, but I think the timeline was a
Yeah.
little ridiculous. So this is not even 5 months after the first Voice of Cards game from Square Enix, the card-based tabletop style RPG. So the first one was the Isle Dragon Roars. The second game was it's coming out. It's coming out on the 17th, so we're recording the Wednesday. It's coming out on the Thursday, I believe. And so this is called Voice of Cards: The Forsaken Maiden. And it's very much just more Voice of Cards. So if you liked the first game, you're probably going to like this one. They really don't change very much. It is a new narrator, which I didn't love as
Boo.
much compared to the first one. The first one I thought was very effective. My complaint about the first game was that I wanted to hear the characters talk, but then I had no problem with the narrator himself. It is a different narrator, so I'm not sure why they made that decision. Um, but at any rate, it is other than that, it's still a very very similar game. The turn-based battles are back, where you use the gemstones to as kind of your currency for special attacks, magic attacks, what have you. You get different party members as you go. Rather than kind of accruing party members and being able to switch them in and out, the narrative style is a little bit different here. I likened it more to like a collection of short stories rather than one long kind of
Hmm.
plot line, one solid plot line. There is an overarching story here about a girl, a maiden of a village, who she's kind of trying to um, realize her potential, I guess, to become like a fully fledged maiden. The idea is that the maidens of every village or every island protect the island from destruction. I guess, a giant monster or natural disaster, whatever. Something threatens the isle. This kind of foreboding evil in the background, and the idea is that the maiden, her name is Lati. You want to go to the other surrounding islands to fetch these relics or borrow these relics from the other maidens. I guess the maidens who have already kind of reached their full potential, and maybe Lati can just borrow the relics to assist her in her journey. The main character can be named by you. The given name, kind of funny, is Baron, Barren, which is fun. I thought it was kind of funny for a named character who maybe doesn't have a ton of personality to be named Baron. That feels like a Bravely Default kind of joke
Yeah.
for a character name. But at any rate, yeah, Baron and Laddie are the two main characters, and you get a boat, and you kind of you take the boat and sail to different islands, and on every island a new story or a new chapter kind of unfolds. You
Hmm.
don't really have a choice of islands until about two-thirds of the way through the game, where you can choose to go kind of north or east, I guess. There are, believe it's 5 chapters or 4 in a finale, so about the same kind of length as the first game as well, in that
Was it
10-hour
10,
range.
10, 12, I guess.
Yeah, 10 to 12. You could go back, and there are some secrets to find afterwards, but yeah, so again, it's fairly well paced. I think the breakdown into different stories for each island does give the game a good sense of pacing. You get different kind of party members for every island you go to, so you'll get a new maiden who joins your team, like a new element, right? Like you go to the first island in the south, and it's the water or ice element affiliated maiden, complete with like a water temple as well that you have to explore. So you get, and then she has like an attendant that joins your team. So you always get kind of 2 partner characters that join you temporarily. So you've got 4 characters at a time in this game, compared to I think it was always 3 in the first game. So that is another slight departure. Rather than going to explore like larger land masses, you get a boat in this game, so you're doing a little bit more exploring over the sea.
Do the
It,
cards do
yeah,
the
but
so are the is the C cards that flip as you move?
yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing where
Oh, so okay,
the
so there's like
cards.
waves that are kind of flipping as you're moving through the sea.
Yeah. So the cards flip over in the water, and then they reveal water tiles, or they
Water.
reveal mountains you find in the water,
Oh, really?
um, or boats that have been shipwrecked. You can still find like event cards that pop up in the island. So
Oh,
they're
yeah.
kind of those side quests connected to events. Maybe you find a key somewhere, you need to find the door where the key goes, or
Hmm.
you help someone with a bag. There's a funny side quest early on. I won't spoil how it ends, but you basically you find like a necklace or a bag of jewelry or something like that, and you have a choice to return it to the person who lost it or not. And so depending on your decision, an interesting event will unfold. So
I just
you have
imagine.
some of those fun choices too with how you approach I guess different events that occur in the game. It's fairly easy. I avoided a fair number of the random battles that appear. I think the random battles appear a little bit too much. I might have had that complaint about the first game as well. The encounter rate's pretty high. Um, it's that problem is kind of compounded by the fact that in the Switch version of the game, there's a little bit of a not lag, but just a little bit of a delay before combat starts, and then after you win an encounter, before your experience points and gold are, I guess, tallied, and you earn them. So there's a few second delay, which gets a little bit annoying, but not certainly not a deal breaker or anything like that. Still fine.
You played the first one. You played on PS5, right?
PS4. Yeah, I played on PS5. That's right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I checked out the Switch version. One of Alex at Nintendo World Report. He edited the video review for me, and so I went through. He sent me some Switch footage, and I kind of compared it, and I thought it was closer than it is now. I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is about the same. But playing more of the game on Switch this time, I guess playing the game all the way through on Switch this time, it did feel a little bit slower. I wonder if it's something that'll get patched for launch day. That could be something that comes here with this launch or with this release. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I guess launch day is tomorrow for us, but yeah, we'll see if there's an update to it. But again, not a deal breaker. There isn't really a lot of lag. Only when a bunch of cards are all flipping at the same time did I notice any. Otherwise, the performance is pretty good. There's one long load time at the very beginning when you load up a save file or start a new one. But after that, the load times are pretty minimal. Yeah, but yeah, I guess some of the big changes, like I mentioned, are just the kind of separation of the game into smaller chunks, smaller story beats or storylines. I guess like you finish an island and you finish those characters, and then you like that's kind of that part is
That's
done.
it.
You don't have a
Yeah.
reason to go back there. Like unless you wanted to flip over every card in the game, I guess, or look for every treasure, you might go back there, but there really isn't any backtracking in this game at all.
Yeah, there really wasn't in the first one either.
Exactly. Yeah.
Except for, like you said, if you wanted to go back. I think I can't remember. There might have been, because I played on PS5. There might have been an achievement to flip every card or something like that. So I think that might have been the only reason to go back, because there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Is I guess you don't want to. We don't want to spoil anything, but are there any connections to the first game, like story beats wise? Like, do we meet any old characters, or can you
I
say
can
without?
I will say the word yes.
Okay.
There is or are connections to the first game, aside from just gameplay mechanics.
Okay.
So, for anyone who has played the first game will see something in the second game and be like, "Oh, that's cool." And I was happy to see some of those direct references to the first game. So yeah, someone who played the first one can look forward to that. And I get the sense they're going to keep doing that because the first game ended with a message like, see you next time in the world of Voice of Cards or something like that. And
Yeah.
this game ends on the exact same kind of title card at the end. So it does seem like they're setting up this universe. And I guess if people keep buying them, they're going to keep making them. I
Yeah.
imagine once you've got this template where you're really just changing the story, and the music felt very similar. I couldn't say if it was exactly the same. I didn't remember, but if really they're just changing the narrator and then the story, it's not too much effort maybe to keep pumping these out. So I'd keep playing them. I think they're fun. They're not too long, and I think there's definitely a niche to fill with like smaller 7 to 12 hour RPGs. So I'm happy to
Yes.
see more of these games.
Yeah. Well, now it's funny because, like, now that we've played a few like early in the year, I'm appreciating them more. Like, the 10 to
Yes,
20
yes.
hours, especially after Monarch, that was into the 50-hour range. So
Yeah.
it's definitely nice to at least mix them in anyway. Like, putting these 50 to 100 hours back to back can be pretty difficult,
You mean you need a
especially when
palate
you want to.
cleanser, right? Right, and I think that's
Yeah.
what Deedlit was such a good example of that. Like between Cold Steel 2 and then Pokemon Legends, like to have Deedlit, a 5 hour game in the middle there was fantastic.
Yeah. And a
Even
totally different kind of game too, because you're going from
yes,
like
yes,
a turn-based game where it's very passive, to a certain degree. Like, you're not mashing buttons or that sort of thing, and then to go to Deedlit, that all of a sudden, like, you're it's kind of back to the original Nintendo fielding days
hmm
where energy's flowing and you're trying to time your jumps and dodge attacks, and you're hitting buttons, and you're peeling the skin off your fingers because
that's right. Yeah.
you're jamming the controller so bad.
But even Voice of Cards is great for this because, like, we've got all these big games coming up. Triangle Strategies around the door, around the corner. Elden Ring, Horizon for those who are picking it up. Like, this is a great game to finish before those come out, or just to have, like, when you want to break between the next big thing. To whip through this game pretty fast, like it's great to have these kind of, again, I think they're really really suited to portable. Even though I played the first game on PS5, like that was just because we got that code earlier. We couldn't get the Switch code until closer to launch, so I wanted to make sure we hit the embargo. So I took the PlayStation code, knowing that I'm not going to publish this review on a Nintendo site until I've checked out the Nintendo version pretty thoroughly. So
Yeah.
I went through like an hour of Nintendo footage. I was like, okay, like, yeah, the performance looks pretty comparable here. Again, I couldn't remember if that was after a patch or an update or anything like that, but um, I did want to say one more thing about the Forsaken Maiden, and that is, gosh, of course, I just had it. No, I don't. Um, there are some like cool narrative things it does with you kind of, I don't want to say too much, but you kind of have to um fix Lati a little bit. Like, there parts of her are broken or need to be mended. So you go into this alternate world, and you're kind of repairing damage to her heart or something like that. It's just, so that is kind of a cool departure that happens, where you leave the world that you've been exploring and you go into this alternate world, that's kind of devoid of color and everything like that. So that's kind of a cool thing to see
That's neat.
happen, and then explore this like subworld, I guess, it's kind of inside her mind or inside her heart or something like that. So that was a pretty cool find. um the I mentioned that, like, I think the overarching story suffers a little bit for being broken into smaller chunks. It is cool to get different characters to your party that kind of show up, and they've got different abilities. You have to learn how to use their abilities, but the new maidens that and their partners that join your team don't level up with you. Only you level up. And so what
Hmm.
that means is, when you get to the final battles are really really tough, I found, because a probably go skipping half the battles, but also because your partners don't level up. Like, only Baron and Lati actually do level up for your team. There is kind of a puppet character that joins you as well, but they're kind of a throwaway. I wouldn't really consider them much of a character. They're kind of like, they're more like a guide, but
Yeah.
even though they're on your team. But yeah, so there's some progression kind of that suffers a little bit, both in terms of the gameplay but also the narrative. You don't really get to form these longer relationships with all the characters, because as soon as you meet the two, you complete their mission, and then you leave their island, and then that's kind of done with it, right? So
Yeah.
it is kind of funny that way. But if you're into that style of storytelling, where the stories are, their individual narrators are a little bit more contained, rather than always in service of the overarching narrative, then you might dig that. And I have to give them props for trying a new style for sure. It isn't just the same as the first game with this long story where you're basically seeking out the dragon. This one, like, it does feel like there's more things going on, and you're helping people solve individual problems. One of the islands has like an arena where you're fighting monsters. Like, that's pretty cool. And yeah, I'll probably leave it at that, just in terms of what you see, because I want
Yeah.
people who haven't played it or are planning to play it to discover what it's all about. But it's a fun game. I ended up giving it the exact same score. I mentioned on Twitter that, which is 7.5 out of 10. I mentioned on Twitter that I actually think I prefer the first game a little bit more, but I was very happy to play the second one. I do think they're extremely comparable, just different in a few small ways.
Yeah, I really enjoy Yoko Tero's games. Like, I find that it does tries to do unique things, or tries to do things that haven't been done. Just that kind of style. I don't know. It's I like even it's funny because, like, the Voice of Cards, like, the battle system is very rudimentary, really. Like,
Yeah,
it's kind of just a basic RPG, but just the way that they try to present it in this neat way, like, that's where my appreciation of the first game came in. Is that it's like, yes, it's using, basic RPG mechanics, but I still just enjoyed the way it was presented, and the story beats and that sort of thing. So
for sure.
Yoko Taro is definitely one of those writers or developers that I'm trying to follow now, because it's just like, we played Near Automata and I love that. and love this. And
And
then
we're
I
gonna
actually
play
just
Near Replicant,
yep,
right? We're gonna play
soon. I
that for sure.
just got it, so
Yeah,
I'm
nice.
happy with that. So we'll have to get on that at some point during this deluge of games that are coming out in the next few
I
weeks.
know.
But
It's tough, man. But I kind of echo those sentiments. You know, whatever Yoko Taro is working on, like he's so kind of eclectic as a game maker that it is worth checking out and just seeing what's going to be different here, what's going to be
yeah,
unique. And yeah, you can see his DNA or his kind of fingerprints all over these games. But they're often kind of smaller things, right? They're often like little details that I wouldn't want to talk about on a podcast necessarily, but people kind of discover. And you for anyone who's played one of his games, you see them, you're like, oh, that's one of his trademark kind of things, and
yeah.
you recognize that in the story or whatever. But yeah, good game, definitely worth picking up. Fans of the first one should like this one. And I am very curious to see what they do with the third one. And we probably won't have to wait very long. If the timeline keeps up, we're going to
Yeah,
get 3 and 4 later this year, right? So
yeah.
maybe in the summer we get one, in the winter we get one. I don't know how if they're going to keep up that pace,
I
but we'll see.
still can't believe they did it so 5 months after and
It is
right
crazy, yeah.
before. Like I don't. It's amazing to me what Square Enix has in the hopper right now, because they have so many games coming out within like a 4 week span, and then they just drop this out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is, like you said, it must have sold well enough that they went ahead and made this one.
Yeah. It
And
either sold well enough or it's cheap to make. It's one of those
yeah,
two, right? Or
it's
maybe
probably
both.
probably
Maybe
both. I was gonna
both.
say,
Yeah.
because they probably, like, now that it seems like the type of game where it's like, okay, the engine is there, they
Yeah.
kind of just need to like palette swap. It's like, okay, like now we just got to drop new card
Yeah.
faces,
I can't
or
imagine the second one costs very much at all to make.
no,
After you've got the
no,
first one, you're reusing so many assets.
yeah,
Again, it's a new narrator, you're recording his lines, and it's a new art for the characters, art for the abilities, I guess, maybe some new music, but so much of it, so much
yeah,
of what the game is
it's
just
got to be
is just
90%
repeated.
reused,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
feels that way.
So no, but yeah, if they make more, I'll probably pick this one. Like I got so many pre-orders coming in. I'm probably gonna wait to see if this goes on sale in a little bit.
Hmm.
We were joking before, like, you got Elden Ring coming up, Triangle Strategies coming up like a week after that. I've already had to make the decision to pass on Horizon for now and wait for the sale, because
Yeah,
there's
same.
too much coming out. And then just played Monarch. Luckily, I got to review that one, because that would be another hit to my pocketbook
Hmm.
if not. And I don't think you're getting Stranger of Paradise, but I definitely have that pre-ordered because I want my Stranger of Paradise baseball cap.
Yeah, if anything tempted me, maybe it was the baseball cap more than anything. No, but
Yeah,
I feel like I feel like March is going to be just continuation of playing these two games, and then we'll see what else comes out. Like, there's probably still unannounced games. Like, here's the thing: Silk Song could drop any day. Like,
yeah,
there are these games we've been waiting for a long time. Sports Story, Silk Song, like they could drop anytime. Like, if anyone sees like a free week in March, like, oh, okay, let's just put it out there. Like, I can't think of. I mean, you've got Kirby at the end of the month. You've got Triangle Strategy at the beginning, because February is so short. Everyone's still going to be playing Elden Ring. March is already full of stuff to
yeah.
play. Like, I don't know.
Well,
It's funny. Like,
and then those RPGs, like those remakes of old RPGs, like I think Live Alive, and Chrono Cross are both in April, I think.
are they both? I think Chrono Cross. I thought Live Alive was July. Maybe
Oh,
you're
okay.
right.
Chrono, I think Chrono's in April though, right?
Live Alive is July 22nd. Chrono Cross, I think, is like April 7th or something like that.
Yeah. And then
Oh
I
gosh, I
remember
can't
there
wait.
was a couple games coming out in April, because I was thinking like, okay, I wonder if we're gonna get just creamed at the beginning of March, maybe
Yeah,
get through March, and then April can be stuff that we missed out on
right.
because it was too busy. And then I'm like, oh crap, like okay, now that we got now we got the April listings already coming out, and that's all. Like, there's gonna, like you said, there's gonna be stuff we don't even know about because they're gonna be shadow dropping stuff. And then
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's gonna
April.
be something around in like the June E3 air time, because everyone's gonna have their own. Like, I can't imagine E3 is gonna be much like I'd imagine all the hardware makers are gonna be doing their own thing. But it's the time of year where they're dropping stuff, so something's coming out then too.
You're gonna like this week in April. This is nuts. So basically first week of April ish. April 5th is Star Wars Lego The Skywalker Saga. I think it's
Okay.
coming to every platform. April 7th is Chrono Cross. April 8th is Advance Wars 1 and 2, and April 12th is 13 Sentinels on Switch. Like that's 1 week. That's 1
Oh man.
week. Like I'm playing at least 2 of those, I think. You know, maybe I might play Star Wars. I don't know. Like, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely interested in playing Advance Wars. Chrono Cross is a day one purchase for sure. Like, you're playing at least 1 or 2 of those. Like, I think a lot of people would be at least interested in 1 or 2 of those. So yeah, that's tough, right? I mean,
Oh, and
you
Force
and I can
Unleashed
vouch,
is
like,
April 20th.
yeah, exactly. So that Nintendo Switch Sports comes out at the end of the
I've
month,
never played
and
that
this
one.
is what we know right now. There's
Yeah.
going to be more things that get announced for that time frame,
Oh,
right?
for
So
sure. Yeah.
that it's just crazy that, like, you know, we got all these announcements, all the months have just filled up with all these great games, and you're looking for, like, oh, when's a good backlog clearing month?
There is.
Doesn't look like there
Yeah.
is going to be
Yeah.
one. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, and you still need to pick up that PS5 upgrade for Cyberpunk, and you have to
Please,
review.
please.
You have to review the DualSense.
Oh my gosh.
What do you call it? The interactive romance scenes of.
Yeah, that's right. The added romance scenes and the dual sense editions. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know. That's one of those, like, I really have nothing else to play right now. I'll put Cyberpunk in. The download or the update will probably take all day, and I won't actually get to play it. I'll probably just forget about it or something. But
I feel like that's one of those features where they're like, okay, you know, we're gonna drop our update, and then they looked around to see what was happening, and like, oh man, we need some kind of Twitter trending news to stick.
yes, exactly,
So they
exactly.
just like told some intern to be like, go figure out a way to make the dual sense you know, rumble during the said thing, so that we can make a big deal about it, and everyone could talk about it on
That's right.
Twitter.
Everyone was complaining that the characters couldn't get it on. So let's add some sex scenes. We'll add dual sense, and everyone's gonna pick it up again on PS5. Like, I don't know. I don't think this is and I joked about it on Slack. Like, this was the timing of it could not be worse. Like,
Yeah,
you drop it, like, I don't know if it was the same
after the
day as
direct,
it was
but
after. It was
you
literally
know,
after the direct, and everyone's talking about all these big games that got announced or
yeah.
dated or whatever, and no one's talking about Cyberpunk, or it's the butt of every joke still, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It just, the whole thing still continues to be a mess. I know there's people that enjoy it and are probably going to like getting into it now. If I were going to play it, I'd want to start from the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
Just play with different class and play the game a little bit differently and maybe see that would be an easier way to enjoy the game. You get to see all the changes kind of from the beginning rather than trying to jump into a completed save file. So
I
yeah,
definitely want to
don't
see
think I'm
what it
going to be
looks
doing
like
that.
now.
But
Like, I do.
yeah,
It's funny because I actually do want to play it,
yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it.
but not now. Like, it's gotta. I don't know. It's such weird timing. Like, if this had come out a couple months ago, I probably
Yeah.
would be playing it right away. But
If this was beginning of January, I would have played it for sure. Like, if this
yeah,
was before Pokemon Legends, I would have given this a shot, just because it's beginning of the year. There's not a lot of new games, but to drop an update, like, again, a week before Horizon, 2 weeks before Elden Ring, like,
yeah,
what are you thinking? Like, it just no, there's no sense. There's no,
no,
no rhyme or reason to it. But
nope.
yeah, it just smacks of, like, a lot of this game just kind of pushing everything out before it's ready. You know, just doing everything as fast as possible rather than without strategizing about when to do it. Or yeah, it's just weird. Like, whatever.
Or you think they?
Cyberpunk is cyberpunk.
Yeah, I thought they would have waited for, and it kind of came out with little, like, even they didn't make that huge a deal. It's like, here's a
Mm.
Twitter reveal or whatever. Like, I thought they would have done something, waited until there was like some kind of Xbox expose or something, or
Yeah, or
PlayStation, like
even
a state of play
A
or
PlayStation
something.
event, like a PlayStation. What do they
The
call them?
state
State
of
of
play, I
play.
think is,
Yeah, you could do
yeah.
something like
I
that. But
would have assumed it would have been something like that, where it's like, it's coming, you know, today or tomorrow
sure,
or
sure.
something, like, and then you had all eyes on it and stuff.
Oh,
But
just
now
a
it's just,
blog post and a Twitter drop. That's what it felt
that's
like,
right.
right? And
Yep.
I mean, that it feels like that's the kind of effort they're putting into it. And I'm sure people have worked really hard to make it a better game, but you've just lost so much goodwill. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
On
know.
to Witcher 4 now.
I just don't think it's a good enough game to even, for, at least I didn't enjoy it enough to go back and try to maybe get some more joy out of it.
Yeah.
I just don't know that there's enough. I played it, finished it, rolled credits, good enough for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Well, I make the Witcher joke, but now I'm
yeah.
starting to think it's like, hey, we were promised a Witcher 3 next gen upgrade. Where is that?
Yeah, I know. They're going to spend all the time in next gen upgrades and not making a next gen game.
Yeah.
I mean that's what going to cost them, right? Is trying to release this game on the previous gen platforms. You release it on PS4 and Xbox One, and then that's probably where a lot of this trouble started, right? Rather than
Yeah.
just skipping straight to native dedicated PS5 and Xbox
They should
Series
have just
versions.
they should have just owned the next gen consoles. Like if
Yeah.
they had done a good job on next gen consoles, that it kind of would be like Breath of the Wild. You know, when the
Mhm.
Switch came out, the attach rate was like 101% or something, right? It's like
Yeah.
people who didn't have a Switch were still buying the game. Like
Exactly.
that,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would have been. I think it would have been something similar to that, where it's like if they nailed it out of the park on the next gen and just focused on that, then
Mhm.
they probably would have done well. But
I'm sure it's made money. I'm sure it's made money, but I think it's hurt their reputation a lot. I think that whatever their next game is, like brand new game, whether that's Witcher 4 or something else,
yeah.
I think they're gonna have to do a lot to convince people
Oh yeah,
to pre-order it or to get behind it.
gonna be a
It
lot of
can't just
skeptics.
be it can't just be like, oh, here's Witcher 4. Like you love Witcher, right? You love the TV show, you loved Witcher 3. Here's Witcher 4. I think they have to do more. I think they have to like reassure people that this is going to come out in a playable state and
Yeah,
not just something where you throw free DLC at people to placate
yeah,
them. So
that's right.
yeah. It's just funny. Our last call took a turn for the worse there when you made your cyberpunk joke. So I hope you're happy about that. But
Well,
maybe we'll
cyberpunk ruins everything.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no patch for the podcast to edit that out, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll save the that kind of discussion we teased a little bit for another day, another episode. But yeah, so this is an episode where we want to look back at some of the smaller games we played over the last few weeks. I think we could all, to some extent, and maybe even more, recommend them to everybody. Rise of the Third Power. Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth and Voice of Cards, The Forsaken
Mhm.
Maiden, all pretty solid, either RPGs or games with RPG elements, but certainly all games in the Thirsty Mage wheelhouse for sure. I'm happy that I got to turn David on to some games that he really got into, especially Record of Lodoss War. Maybe we get into a new fantasy book series as a result of playing that
That's right.
game. But
Yeah.
yeah, these are games everybody should check out. Really good palate cleansers. Not overly long. Either RPGs or kind of action RPG type games, but all a lot of character, a lot of fun, good design. They'll play pretty well, and available on different platforms too, right? I think Rise of the Third Power it's on Steam. I think there might be a PS4 version as well. And obviously we played it on Switch. Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth, like David mentioned, it's on Game Pass. Like no excuse to not go and at least try it if you have an
Yep.
Xbox. But it's on Switch, plays great portably, plays better handheld than on TV for some reason. I don't know why.
That's funny.
There's a little
I've
bit of
heard that with
lag.
a few games now
Yeah.
lately.
It's a funny thing. It was a little bit of lag playing on TV. I played the whole thing portably, basically, and then Voice of Cards, Forsaken Maiden. If you liked the first game, you're going to like this one. It's a little bit different. Changes up the narrative style, but still very good. But yeah, I think that'll do us for today. Obviously, a lot of big games coming out. We're going to be
Yeah.
talking about those really soon. I know we'll be sharing impressions of games like Elden Ring and the full Triangle Strategy when that comes out. Maybe even some demo impressions of Triangle Strategy as well. I can say that I really really enjoyed it. The progress carries over, and you got to love a demo where the progress will transfer to the full game. So,
The only way to do it.
yeah,
Should be the
they've been
only
doing.
legal way to do it.
That's right, exactly, and they've been doing a good job with those kind of games. So,
Yep.
but yeah, that'll do us for this episode. This was episode 151. A lot of cool indie retro style games, smaller games to play, and God knows we need to have smaller games to get us through the next few months because we're
Yep.
definitely picking up some heavy hitters soon.
Yeah. Our list of completed games is only growing by the day.
That's right. So thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave us a rating on your podcatcher. Leave us a comment. You can email David at thethirstymage.com with any feedback, suggestions for episodes, games you want us to cover. We'll see if we can fit them into our very, very loaded RPG schedule, but we'd love to hear from you,
Mhm.
whatever that is. But thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.
But